My problem with all of you, many of you, is that you think the multifamily business is about spreadsheets. You think that it is some kind of commodity like gold that you can buy and sell, or stocks. Your business is providing a family a home. Don't you want to be proud of it? Don't you want to give them a product that you can go to sleep at night and say, I did a good job? Just be good at what you do. If I ever owned a multifamily property or some kind of community, that I would ensure the safety and dignity of everyone, including especially the kids who live in that property.
When you think about everything you've done, are you proud of yourself?
In this episode, I sit down with Norman Radow, founder and CEO of the Radco Companies, whose story starts in Brooklyn public housing and ends with transforming entire communities. We talk about the moral responsibility of owning housing, what it means to be a Mensch in business, and why clean, safe homes should be non-negotiable. If you care about legacy, leadership, and doing business the right way, this one will stay with you long after the episode ends.
I started thinking like an employee. Where does my next check come from when I started my business? Who's going to pay the mortgage next month if I fail? I lost a lot of sleep. That's something that took me several cycles to finally break that habit.
What makes you great at doing business?
Well, that's a really great question. And I'll tell you.
Property managers lose hours chasing rent, while delinquency and filing costs add up to massive losses. The financial impact? Millions in unpaid rent sold to collections agencies that recover just 20 to 30%, while taking a huge cut. Now, the Kelsey you trust for leasing helps you recover more rent in-house, reducing reliance on agencies and maximizing revenue. With Collections AI, Kelsey automates rent and move-out collections, from the first missed payment to move-out, while ensuring compliance across jurisdictions. Easily train and set up Kelsey on your company's collections process, including CARES and state-regulated workflows. She doesn't just set reminders. Kelsey answers resident questions, tracks promise to pay dates, and follows up persistently to keep payments on track. Need oversight? Corporate teams can monitor collections in real time with Zuma's dashboard, while site teams use the Chrome Assistant to track payments and even respond as Kelsey when needed. Kelsey also evaluates resident risk with AI, providing instant insights to help you make smarter renewal decisions. The impact? Doubles collections velocity, reduces filings, cuts site team workload by 85%. Stop leaving rent revenue on the table. Let Zuma's Collections AI handle the heavy lifting while you focus on what matters. Get started today.
Rolling?
Shiv, welcome to the program.
Norman,
So glad to have you here today.
thank you for having me. I'm excited to be the guest on my own podcast in your own office.
Well, I'm excited to hear what we're going to learn today.
This is going to be a really fun one. For the people listening, we just drove from New Orleans to Atlanta, and Norman is leaving to Israel tomorrow. And I was like, we had it scheduled in a studio, and it was a little bit far, and he was going to cancel it. I was like, no, we're doing this somehow. So we're currently sitting in the Radco office in their, what is it, the closing room?
It is our executive lounge, but it's
Executive
really
lounge.
our little pub.
A little pub, yeah, exactly. So for those listening, Norman and I have cocktails.
Well,
I'm
I shouldn't hide my logo.
Yeah, I'll give you the logo
Yeah,
too.
l'chaim.
Yeah, cheers. So this is the first one we're doing with the drink, which should be really fun.
I thought I'd loosen you up so you feel more comfortable.
I was telling Norman this is the first one that I'm nervous for, so he was giving me some confidence. No, I'm kidding.
And some Basil Hayden. So
Basil Hayden.
that usually does the trick.
I love it. Okay, so where I want to start, Norman, is I'm a very big believer that a lot of our early life is super indicative of who we are today. And I think a good place to start would be, what do I need to understand about your early years to understand the person I'm sitting with today?
Well, that's a really great question. And I'll tell you, I can make a case for that being absolutely true, at least anecdotally with me. But at the time, I didn't think that's what was happening. But in hindsight, I believe that is very true. Maybe it's by accident, or maybe we make our own accidents and make our own fortunes on luck. But I was born and raised in a public housing project in East New York in Brooklyn. And it was a wonderful place. It was veterans housing in those days. And this is back, I was born in 1957. And we had a bucolic childhood at the beginning. They had lots of green spaces, hundreds of, if not thousands of kids. We knew everybody. It was a racially, demographically mixed neighborhood with Jews, Italians, Irish, blacks, and Hispanics. Everyone got along, and really, I grew up in safety and feeling loved, and it was just a wonderful community. Pardon me. In the mid to late 60s, when I was about 9 or 10, policies changed radically. You know, there's a whole movement, the anti-war movement and civil rights movement, and all worthwhile, well-intentioned ideas that then got distorted in a way that really radically affected my childhood to my detriment. So the all the policies and procedures that the housing authority had to keep kids safe were one by one dismantled either by politicians or by the courts. And my life started to change dramatically. And I'll give you one example, just one, and we can talk about it if you want to now, but otherwise at home, you should think about this really thoughtfully. So there used to be in our leases a rule that you as a family unit were responsible for all your family living in your apartment. So if you had 2 kids, you had 3 kids, you had a cousin, whoever was living there, you were responsible for their conduct. And truly, even today, we talk about the family being the basic unit of civilized society. So that family unit does need to educate, does need to tap into something where they can influence and control how the family operates. And so if someone in that family unit committed a crime or did something that violated the lease in some significant way, then the housing authority had the right to evict the entire family. Now, it may sound draconian, but it worked. People were responsible. They knew this was affordable, it was clean, it was safe, it was a nice place to live. And if you wanted that and you could afford it because it was so inexpensive, then you were going to fight like hell to make sure you can maintain that apartment. And so families did do just that. Were there bullies? Yeah. Were there kids fighting in the street occasionally? Yeah. But it was not anything out of the ordinary for any neighborhood anywhere else. And so my father would go up to another father and say, your son bullied my kid today, or vice versa. Normal stuff, life. And then in the 1967, 1968, all that sort of changed. As that rule was applied away, other rules were applied away. Courts held them void as against public policy. Then the city started urban renewal. There's a great urban renewal effort. And so no longer were veterans priorities in getting housing in the housing authority, but the displaced from urban renewal in other sections of Brooklyn. And they would move in with 2 or 3 families, lots of kids, less ability to control them, maybe single parent households. The schools got overwhelmed. And so my life just became miserable. I was threatened all the time. I used to have to keep, in those days, my lunch was like a quarter. If you were going to buy lunch, it was a quarter. So I'd have the quarter in my sock, and then I'd take a penny, 2 or 3 pennies, and put it in my pocket so they can hear a jingle, because almost every day I was shaken down for money. And
By
they
the
would,
older kids.
or even kids my age, they'd come in 10 or 20 packs and surround you and demand money. And so if I didn't have it, they beat the heck out of me. So I always had tribute in my pocket that I let them hear the jingle and they'd go for it, and I'd give them those pennies, and my dollar or my quarter would always be in my sock.
And this was at 9 years old, you said?
This is at 9 years old, 10 years old, 11 years old. And it was really it really is eye-opening. My parents, who are wonderful old school liberals, who I think in a way I still am, said that's not possible. Boys will be boys. These things just happen. Didn't realize that this was a totally new experience for them. when I'd come home bloody, they'd say, "Oh, you boys, it takes two to fight." And I said, "Yeah, Ma, one to throw the punch, the other to receive it. That's the, it takes two to fight." And so my childhood became miserable the last 2 or 3 years in East New York. It was really, really, really difficult. And eventually my sister, who was 3 years younger, was accosted and attacked when she was, I think, 10 or 11. And my parents decided, where a gang sort of followed her home. And my parents decided to move then. And it was a very traumatic thing for us at the time. But the point of all this, it's a very long story to tell you a short point, but an important one, is I said that if ever I could control the destiny of a community, if I ever owned or managed or somehow was involved with a multifamily property or some kind of community, that I would ensure the safety and dignity of everyone, including especially the kids who live in that property. It would have to be clean. It would have to be safe. It would have to be for a value that a family would be proud to live in and that they could afford. And I talked about it in my childhood. I said, if I was in the housing authority, this is what I would do.
You were saying that as
And
a kid?
I was saying that then, not thinking I'd ever be in the housing authority or be a housing authority or be an owner of tens of thousands of multifamily units, particularly workforce housing. But that's what I said at the time. So that was I think a aha moment for me that sadly lasted several years, and that it's really been ingrained in me in a very personal way.
What did your parents do growing up, work-wise?
My father was an engineer, and my mother was a homemaker / legal secretary. So she would not very good on the homemaker side, but excellent on the legal secretary side. Back in the days when we had manual typewriters, we just started having electric. We didn't have, cut and paste or anything. Cut and paste included scissors and Scotch tape. There was no computers then. And my mother was took exceptional dictation and typing. She was very smart and could handle a lot of the law office's work without bothering the attorney. She was really good at it. Homemaking, not so much.
Why do you say that?
She didn't like it and she was not a very good cook. And
Is that your mother over there?
that is my mother. Yes, I named
We'll add that picture in the podcast.
Yes, that's her. That is her portrait. I renovated the largest lobby at Kennesaw State University in what's now the Norman J. Radow College of the Humanities and Social Sciences. I named it after my mother, and it's called the Bev. Her name was Beverly. So there's all these, kids now say, "I'll meet you at the Bev. Let's go study in the Bev." And there's a Starbucks there, which makes it very popular. And so that's my mother. But she passed away just a year ago last week. So she's on my mind today. But she was not a very good cook. And I think the reason was she was really the smartest of her siblings. And she was born in 1927. And in those days, women didn't go to college. And so her brothers went on to get become a surgeon and a PhD and a professor and actually a special assistant to the President of the United States. And my mother was a homemaker. And I think she always resented that and really probably, and her brothers would argue today, and they're still alive, that she was the smartest of the three of them. And she would have gone on to great things if she was allowed to do so. So women's rights, everyone. In fact, my daughter, who works in the company, was asked a spontaneous question: why are so many more women CEOs in real estate more successful than their male counterparts, person to person? And she said, it's really easy. You can only become a woman CEO if you're great, if you're excellent. And mediocrity, men could still become a CEO if they're mediocre. And that really still stabs me in the gut. Thank God there are women CEOs in real estate, and there are more and more. But it is sad that we're still thinking that way.
When you think about your parents, how would you describe how you talked a little bit about your mother. What about your father, and how would you describe both their impacts, both positively and negatively, on who you are?
So my father taught me two things. Obviously, he taught me a lot more, but the two things that resonate with me today and every day. And the first was that my father, and I gave this advice to a student just last week, I quoted my father to her. And the question was, should she go to law school? And this was my answer. And it was a quote directly from my father. If you go to law school and you become a lawyer, that gives you the gravitas, it gives you the resume to do anything you want to do in life except practice medicine. So if you want to be a politician, law degree slips right in there. You want to go work on Wall Street, you can work as a general counsel, but you can go right in as if it was an MBA and treat it as an MBA and sell yourself as if you had an MBA. It's the same in business. You can go right into business and use your law degree as a calling card as to why you should be a priority in hiring in the entrepreneurial or business environment. So you can do anything you want to. You can go into philanthropy as well as a lawyer, except practice medicine. And so I did that. I went to law school. And Dad, I didn't practice medicine, so thank God for all the people that were wondering. Though I did eventually get a PhD, so I am technically Dr. Norman Radow Esquire. But that law degree meant a lot. It really taught me a lot. It changed the way I thought. It gave me a lot of discipline in terms of how to think about problems. So that was the first thing my father taught me. Second thing he taught me, and it kind of I debated this when he taught it to me, but he said it so many times. And he said to me, Norman, I don't agree with accountants who look at labor as a cost, as an expense on a profit and loss statement. I look at labor as your most important asset on your balance sheet. And you should treat labor, which means people, you should treat people as if they are the most important asset on your balance sheet. And that means treat them well. And so I took that to heart. And then I saw with my father, when he actually got a grant from the federal government, he ran this program for New York City. He was a city employee, and he started giving out salaries to people who he hired. He had like 18 employees, and they were getting paid more than him. And I saw the benefits he was giving them. And he, again, urged me to rethink about labor as the principal asset on the balance sheet. And he said, the reason I give such great benefits and I want them well paid is because I want them not to worry about their families. I want them to know that everything behind them at home is secure. And when they come to the office, they can focus on taking our mission forward and not thinking about anything defensive with their family. And my father always taught me that. And when I started the company 31 years ago, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, I'm sure you'll want to, that I did two things. I did more than two things, but there are two things that are tangible, is that I got a Cadillac health plan for my employees, the same one I have. Whatever it is, whatever the age was, I paid for it 100%. And then it was a little less out of the norm than today. But today, I think only 5% of companies in America pay 100% of health care. We pay 100%, and we have what I call a Cadillac plan, or maybe today they say a Mercedes plan for our employees. It's a truly spectacular plan. And today it's about $900 and something a month per employee. So it's incredibly expensive. And the second thing we do is we give a 401k plan that we try to drive. I think we have a 95% participation, and we go dollar for dollar match up to 6%. And I tell every employee that if you stay here or you transfer somewhere and transfer your 401k into another program, that when you retire, you will be a millionaire or more. And I know comfortably that you will you are provided for the rest of your life. I said, so look at this very seriously. Don't start to borrow against it. Don't try to cheat it. Don't say, I need some more money now. This 401k plan is your future. And so that's very expensive. No one in real estate, no one in multifamily does that, and not to this degree. They may have 401ks, but they don't have that match, or it may be up to 2% or 3%. They may have a 1-year vesting period, and we don't do any of that. So just my assistant the other day told me she had $300,000 in a 401k. And with her age, I said, if you stop putting money in today, that you'll be a millionaire plus when you retire. So that's if you just stop today. just looking at compounding. So that she said, really? They don't really understand that. Now she does after all these years of participating. And that really excites me. My dad taught me that.
What do you feel like your parents, I'm a big believer that in many cases you also learn what not to do from your parents. Are there any lessons that come to mind of things that you've observed or either heard directly that informed what not to do?
Well, I mentioned earlier, because of their liberalism, and they were really advocates for civil rights. That
Why were they so?
because as Jews growing up in the 20s and 30s, they were oppressed. They felt the discrimination, and their parents came from Russia, and their life stories are heartening and heartwarming, and also scary at the same time. Hearing about the pogroms and the what happened in Eastern Europe. I mean, in fact, my grandparents would never go back, even when we had the money. They would never go back to Europe. In fact, one story, and we'll talk about it. I bought the Four Seasons Hotel here in Atlanta, which is now it's a little older, but it's still beautiful. But 1994, when I bought it, it was one of the most remarkable, brand new, absolutely gorgeous buildings in the city of Atlanta. And it remains a beautiful one today. And we had what was called the Imperial Suite or the Royal Suite, because the first person who stayed in it was like the king of Denmark or something. And so my grandmother came, and it was her birthday, and we were surprising her, and I put her in that suite, and it's a magnificent suite. It was like 1,800 square feet, and it had a giant iron jacuzzi tub, and it was, I mean, stunning beyond belief. And when my grandmother went in and saw it was the royal suite, and I told her, kings and queens of Europe have stayed in this, Grandma. She said, I don't want to have anything to do with it. Get me out of here. Put me in a regular room. I don't want to be caught dead. Anything a king or queen, a monarch of Europe touched, because she knew what she went through in her life and what the Tsar did and what other monarchs did as she walked from Russia all the way to Amsterdam. She walked the entire way as a very young girl to get on a ship in steerage to come to America, and she would have nothing to do with it. She wouldn't have anything to do with Europe, but especially with the monarchs. So it was something that really my parents grew up with, that kind of feeling. So helping the downtrodden, helping those who are oppressed, helping those who are denied full freedoms, that was something they lived for. But when you do that, you have to also be thoughtful. It can't be knee-jerk. And you can see what's going on in the country today, where we have some real issues that should be addressed, and how the pendulum has swung the other way so radically that we're all now hyperventilating about the breadth and depth of the U.S. response on some things, like sending innocent people to Salvadorian jails no one gets out alive. And should some of those people go there? Probably. Should all those people go there? Probably not. And just one person who's denied the right for due process, who shouldn't have been there, is one too many people who are facing strife that they shouldn't be going through. And that's how my parents felt, and I think they felt it so stridently that they allowed my childhood to be lost and overlooked it for what they thought was the greater good at the time.
Do you have siblings? You said you have a sister?
I have a sister who's almost 3 years younger, and I have a brother who's almost 9 years older.
Oh, so you're a middle child.
I'm a middle child.
I'm a middle child too.
See?
What do you think
just
about
proved
that?
my point.
What do you know the whole, do you associate with that at all? Do you think there's any truth to that?
I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not.
Was it true in your experience? Did you feel like your siblings got, your brother you said was 9 years older, right?
Yeah, my brother was, obviously when I was, 6 or 7, he was already, going to start college or so. So, we close. We obviously 3 of us slept in one room, and all 5 of us shared one bathroom. And in, the 40s when this was built, it was a tiny little bathroom. So it was very, very small. And we shared it. We thought it was very normal. We eventually got another bedroom, and my sister, first it was myself, my sister shared a room. My brother had his own room. And then when she got a little older, they thought she should have that room. But we were, we lived in very tight
Yeah.
quarters together. But it was only for a few years until my brother sort of went off to college and then went on his own.
One thing that I'm
Interesting
noticing.
story about him in a second, which will kind of, he's sort of like the anti-norm.
Tell me.
Yeah. So he lived what was that movie in, was it Turkey, that Midnight Express?
Okay.
The guy who was smuggling hashish, he was caught with hashish and went into solitary confinement. That was my brother in Italy. He was caught smuggling hashish.
At what age?
I guess he just graduated college, so he was 20 or 21, and he was sentenced to life imprisonment. And I'm not talking about a large amount of hashish. And he was sentenced to life in prison in solitary confinement in Italy. And my parents, who were not very wealthy people, in fact, the antithesis of wealthy, they lived hand to mouth, raised all the money to, I think, probably was a bribe of some kind to get him out of Italy. Our Italian neighbor helped introduce us to someone in Brooklyn who could conversate with the people in Italy. So my brother got out, and he was emotionally damaged from that.
How long was he
I don't remember. It was before, it was 1968. So 1969. So I was a young kid. I was 10 or 11. But when he came back, he was really searching for something. He joined an ultra-Orthodox Jewish sect for a while, but finally found a guru in visiting from India, and then he flew off to India and became a celibate monk. So for 10 years, I never talked to him. He took a vow of poverty and was in India for a decade or more, and then came back to run the cults. I say cult. I don't know what the better term for it, but to run their operation in North America. So he opened ashrams in Placerville, California, in upstate New York. And
Do you know what it's called?
it's like 7 syllables long.
Okay.
I have a book somewhere that he wrote that talked about it. So,
Wow.
and he took the vow of poverty. So we supported him all his life, and he lived in Placerville in my adult life when I had family. He lived in Placerville. Once a year, I'd fly him to my house, and we always paid for him for his clothes, for everything. And then he met a girl, and when he was 61. He met one of his disciples, who was 25 years junior, a Polish woman living in England, who followed the movement, and he was a master, and she just idolized him.
His
and
first wife or first.
first time ever, yeah. As far as I know, I don't know if he ever had sex. I have no idea. And he got married at 63, left the cult from that, and moved to London. So he goes from living on a mountaintop, a celibate monk, living on a mountaintop, farming and meditating for 40 years, and leaves that and moves to London to be married and get his first job ever. And it's just actually remarkable watching him, fall over himself trying to figure that out, but he did, and I'm really proud of him for the transition he made.
How do you feel
But
like
I call him like the anti-norm.
Yeah, the anti-norm. So people call you Norm?
Yeah, Norman. But
What do you think how do you compare your guys' wiring? Like mental wiring? Like why did he take such an extreme path versus you taking a completely different path?
Well, he's a very smart guy. And I think he's on the spectrum, and I'm probably on the spectrum too, but in a different way. And I think he just has trouble with pressure and tension and the stresses of life. Being in business, I think would be really hard for him to make decisions and then lose sleep at night over these things. I think he's incredibly sensitive in a very loving, wonderful way. And but he's just totally different than me.
What makes you great at doing business? What do you think it is?
I don't know if I'm great doing business. I may be very lucky, and I've made a lot of mistakes along the way. I'm not cutthroat. I love people. I love relationships. I don't want to take advantage of anybody. And so I think those things maybe aren't like the things you associate with being Elon Musk.
Yeah,
So
that's what's kind of, as I sit with you and as I've gotten to know you, I think the thing I'm having trouble understanding is you seem like a very, very different than most like real estate multifamily CEOs, right? I'm guessing you're more on the liberal side than conservative, and it seems like you've almost taken some sort of an unconventional approach.
well, I think I call myself today a radical, but I'm a radical moderate. So I think that's the way I would describe myself. That may be sort of a Kennedy liberal that today is probably now considered almost a neocon. I don't know. Today, the world has moved in such everyone labels everybody. I like. There's a term Donald Trump uses that I actually like. I don't know the way that he necessarily uses, how he implements it, but common sense. I just let's have common sense, and if we let's err on the side of the title of your podcast of being human. Let's err on that side. So that's how I view myself politically. My view is, and I give this speech at every conference I can, where I see young people in the audience in their 20s and 30s who've grown up in one cycle. It was up, 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 and they think they're geniuses. And maybe they are, but they've never gone through another cycle before. I remember in March of 22, I saw all the hubris in the room just as the cycle was, coming to a stark close. Everything closed overnight at the end of March. Just the whole market froze. But just before that, I was giving I was on a panel here in Atlanta, and there's like 300-400 people there. All these smirky late 20s, early 30s, thinking that they're smarter than me, and I turned to them and I asked, has anyone in this audience ever seen a 5% 10-year Treasury rate? And you saw everyone go like this, because at the time Treasury rates were like 1%. I said, well, you're about to. You're about to. And how you handle this is going to determine whether you're going to sink or swim and become a permanent member of our real estate community, or you can be a flash in the pan and you'll be a dinosaur and won't be seen, you'll go extinct. So I said this, they smirked. And I said, listen, guys, I said, my problem with all of you, many of you, is that you think the multifamily business is about spreadsheets. You think that it is some kind of commodity like gold that you can buy and sell, or stocks that you buy and sell and can trade. And there is some aspect of that, and I respect it. But at the end of the day, and this comes from my childhood, going full circle back to growing up in the public housing project, your business is providing a family a home. Don't you want to be proud of it? Don't you want to give them a product that you can go to sleep at night and say, I did a good job? I'm not asking you to take a workforce housing project and make it a Class A core asset. Just like Ford doesn't claim to be Mercedes or Bentley, but it claims to build Ford proud. We build a mid-market car for families who are middle class, and that it's a good enough car that they are proud of it and they can afford it. That's what they do. They don't claim to be anything else. Just be good at what you do. I ask you, I beg, and they smirk and they laugh. Well, they did. We'll see how that changes now that the market has changed. But that's what I try to tell people is that if you build a good product, if you give good service, and there's a restaurant here in Atlanta called Houston's. It's a chain. It's a small chain. Houston's, like the city. And my wife and I like going there and eating at the bar once a month, or twice a month. And when she doesn't want to cook or we have no other plans, we go there and hang out. We meet a lot of people. Usually it's an hour and a half wait to eat at the bar. And meanwhile, there are people lined up out the door to get reservations or a table at the restaurant itself. And you go, wow. And you go look at the 3 other restaurants in the shopping center and they're all empty. You go, what is about Houston's? Well, if you look at Houston's, it has only 15 items on the menu. So they do them all really well. And they price them that they're a value that people covet and want to go and eat there. And that's it. provide a good product, do it simple, it's simple, 15 items, do it all well, and charge a price that people can afford. And wow, people come, right? And so it's about, it's about the product and the service and the value. And that's what I urge all young people, all the people in our industry to remember. That's what we do at the end of the day, providing a family a home. Do you want to be good at it? I do. And that's what we endeavor to do. And, I think our success comes from that. We hear from our investors, people who often are, themselves, tough business people, when they hear that story and they hear that we're trying to do good public policy and make money at the same time, they gravitate to that. They love it. They go, we just celebrated that in our family. We just did something good by investing. And so that's why when we buy workforce housing, it's not our only business, but when we buy workforce housing, and we haven't done it in 7 years, we're buying our first one in 2 weeks. And the reason is if I can't buy it cheap enough that I can make it clean and safe and offer it as a value that people can afford and be proud to live in, I'm not going to do it. And when the prices went too high, where I couldn't capitalize the deal well enough to provide that, I stopped and I sold into that hubris. So that's why I think we're successful long term. I probably would have made a lot more money doing it the other way, but boy, do I enjoy my life, and am I proud of my life and what we do.
Where does this optimism that I feel like you have come from? Were you always a super optimistic person?
I think so. I was always happy.
And your siblings and your
As a
parents, were you guys generally all optimistic, or are you an exception?
My mother was not an optimist. My mother was a worrywart, but my father was. My father always smiled. He always had a twinkle in his eye. I never heard him say a bad word about anybody. Never. And he was a very, very special person. When he died, he got buried in a mausoleum in Boynton Beach, which he had selected. He only had like a 3-foot square stone, and it was in tandem, so my mother would eventually be buried there. So you had just very little room. What can you say about your father? Loving, husband, father, grandfather. What else? What do you say besides date of birth, dash, date of death? Because a lot goes into that dash, right? Your whole life. So how do you take that dash and translate that into his whole life for the world ever after to know? And we picked one word, and an article. So it's 2 words, a Mensch. A Mensch, and that's Jewish for a really fine person. And that's the descriptor on my father's tombstone. Loving father, husband, grandfather, and a Mensch.
What would you hope is your one word that you would want?
Well, I love Mensch. I hope people say I'm Menschlich, that I'm like a Mensch. Pardon me. I was at a dinner party Saturday night, and I met a young developer. I hated him, by the way. He reminds me of you because he's tall, strapping, handsome, and he's now a developer, and probably late 30s or 40 years old, and his whole life's ahead of him. He's got like 10 cycles ahead, and he, and he's got a gorgeous wife. And I told him, I said, I hate you. I just want you to know I hate you, for that. But he said to me when he met me, I didn't know who he was, but he met me and said, he came up to me and said, "Are you Norman Radow? Are you Norman Radow?" And I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "You're a legend. You're a legend." And that really struck me. It really moved me, actually. And I've heard that before. It's sad that I'm the legend of the industry, but it really did move me. It did touch me.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a, I was telling David, who's with us here, and
Hey,
I mean, I told you.
By the way, Dave is the only one not drinking. I wanted to make sure that the camera wasn't shaking or moving off up to the ceiling or something. But we'll give him a drink after this is done.
No, I was just saying that, like, this is like, I mean, your story growing up in the projects and becoming who you are is just, that's such an incredible story. And I feel like what I'm trying to understand is there's so many people like you that grew up in the projects that had a difficult upbringing, But it's minuscule, the people that have actually taken that circumstance and transformed it into something that even resembles what you have. Why is that? Like, where, that's what I'm trying to understand when I sit with you, is like, what is that makes you?
I don't know how true that is, and I, at least the projects I grew up in, before what I call the dark times, before the housing authority lost control, and back when all families saw each other in the courtyard or the stoop, or sat on the stoop of the apartment buildings, or went to each other's houses, apartments, and played stickball, and picked up basketball. We did that every single day, and we one of the kids, a little older than me, a little younger than my brother. I think it was in between us. He was like 5 years older than me. His name was Lloyd Blankfein. And Lloyd Blankfein became the longest serving chairman of Goldman Sachs. And he served right through 2008, if you remember, everything, The Big Short and Too Big to Fail. And then I think for 10 years thereafter, he was the chairman of Goldman Sachs. He grew up in the building next to me. And he'll tell the story, and I remember this as a child, where his father, who was, a worker, and made very little money. They lived hand to mouth. Obviously, we lived in very cheap housing, so that helped. And he passed the civil service test to become a postman, a mailman. That was big. That was huge. It was a party. People threw a party. He became a postman. We celebrated. Wow, he's going to have a pension. He's got medical insurance, right? He'll make a decent living. He'll be able to work 9 to 5. That was a huge thing. Lloyd Blankfein, one of the wealthiest men, and one of the most successful businessmen, lived in the building next door. And I think there's something about the cultural osmosis of the people who lived there at the time that were all coming out of World War II, coming out of the Great Depression. We lived through the Great Recession, but it's nothing like the Great Depression. So they lived through that. Our parents, all the parents in the housing projects, came to the Great Depression, World War II, and coming out, and they were hell-bent on improving their lives. They were hell-bent on their children getting an education that they were denied. My father went back to school because he went right out of high school into the Army. Went back to school on a GI Bill in 1956, I believe, 10 years after he was discharged, when my mother was pregnant with me, and went back to college on the GI Bill. So he had to work full-time, go to college at night, and then come home and take care of a family that grew to three kids. And then he got his graduate degree from, not graduate degree, but he got his degree from Pratt Institute in Brooklyn in engineering in 1960. And people were driven for education. Educate themselves if they had the chance, but educate their kids. And we felt that cultural osmosis. We felt that charge from our families and from all of society. Get educated, get educated, get educated, get educated. And also coming out of that poverty, coming out of the Great Depression, meeting our grandparents, growing up with grandparents who came from the old country and absolute depravity and anti-Semitism, and it was get educated, advance yourself, and do well. And we were driven like that. I think later, when we no longer had those families there, and you had multi-generational poor come in who didn't understand the value of education, that I think you're thinking of that public housing project. But when I grew up, so many famous people and so many successful people came out of that public housing projects in the 1960s. They really did. So I think I'm probably in the middle.
But education is different than being driven to build a business, and a successful one, no? Because you're both, you have 3 degrees, right? And
yeah, but I didn't start that way. So I did do something, I will tell you, in law school. I went to New York Law School. And in 1979, Were you born then? No. Oh, God. God. I got underwear older than you. I can't believe it. So, but 1979, it was a Saturday or a Sunday. I think it was a Sunday. I belonged to a gym in Manhattan called Jack LaLanne. And my local Jack LaLanne was closed on Sunday. And the one that was open was up in, I don't know, Timbuktu in Upper Manhattan, like 140th Street or something, 120, in Harlem. It was in Harlem. And so I took the train up to Harlem on Sunday, and I worked out, and I decided it was such a beautiful day, I would walk home. It's about the West Village, about 5 miles. So I walked, hour and a half walk, very pleasant. New York City was growing beautiful and everything. It was a little dicey up in Harlem, but otherwise it was a beautiful walk. And as I'm walking on 104th and Broadway, I saw a for sale sign for a building on 104th Street, 222-224 West 104th Street, just off Broadway. Had a storefront, 2 loft units, and 8 apartments. Now, you have to realize what New York City was in 1979. In 1976, New York was bankrupt. They had to fire 5,000 policemen. They then had a power blackout, and riots broke out. The police were not there. The city was burning. I think Pete Hamill, the columnist, wrote a book, New York is Burning, about 1976 or 77 when that happened. And real estate values plummeted. To give you an example of this, just a couple of years later, I bought my apartment on West 4th and Bank Street in Greenwich Village, 1 bedroom with a fireplace, for $63,000. And I got a purchase money mortgage for 100% financing from the sponsor. So that was real estate. People fled New York. And just then, in the late 70s, there's an inkling of a revival. So I want you to realize what happened in New York in the late 70s. So when I saw this for sale sign, I said, let me check it out. So I call up, and the owner wanted to sell it for $60,000. Now remember, 8 apartments, 2 lofts, and a storefront. $60,000. He was willing to give $50,000 in purchase money financing. He would finance the 50. So I only had to come up with $10,000. So I went to my father, said, Dad, let me try this. This is great. I can do this. I feel the momentum going. And he lent me the $10,000. And I went in and I cleaned out that building myself. There was just crap everywhere, garbage everywhere. I saw rats. I'm taking a shovel with a wheelbarrow. I was going in and out, cleaning it up on weekends and at nights. And in fact, the building was so old, half the building still had DC current. Some of you may not know what that is, but that's like a battery. DC current, alternating current, and DC current fought tooth and nail between Westinghouse and Thomas Edison, which would GE and Westinghouse, which would be the electric grid of the future. And AC won out, but this building was so old it still had partial DC current. And I cleaned it all up, started renting it, and then someone offered me $125,000 a few months later. They assumed a $50,000 mortgage. So my $10,000 investment got like $60,000 of profit.
In how long?
And in that year, in the year for the year. So a few months. So that I paid my dad back, and that paid for my law school for the rest of law school.
What gave you the confidence to just go and do this deal?
I had no confidence whatsoever. I just went and did it. I had no idea. But what I didn't do, and which was a huge mistake, was I didn't go and double down and buy the next building and the next building and do it to the next building and start a business then. And if I had done that, it was like a 7, 8, 9 year run in Manhattan, uninterrupted before the RTC days, maybe 10 years, that I could have made a fortune. And I didn't do it because my goal ultimately was to go to law school and finish that up and be a lawyer. And I really think back how I missed that cycle. You know, I tasted it. I could have done something really extraordinary with it. And I didn't do it because I wasn't thinking like an entrepreneur at the time. I wasn't thinking that way. And so afterwards, I went and got a job with the city of New York as an assistant corporation counsel assigned to HPD, the Housing Preservation Development Group, dealing with legal issues there for 3 years. I saw a lot of things. I learned a heck of a lot. I learned how to argue in court. I developed a lot of confidence in my speaking ability. And then I went into private practice for a couple of years in New York before I moved to Atlanta. And here I became a general counsel. And I was, again, all salaried. So for 7 or 8, it was 1994. So for 11 years of
You
my
hadn't done any
career,
other-
I was on salary.
And no other real estate deal besides that one.
No other real estate deal. And meanwhile, I became a father, and I had a second child. I had 2 children, and
How did you meet your
I had a
wife?
mortgage, and I had 2 cars, with loans on them. I had student loans I'm paying off. It was tough times. It's like regular people. I mean, it was, it was lose sleep at night. How am I going to pay this bill tomorrow? I'll pay this later, and who can I? How do you balance all your expenses? And I did that until I bought the Four Seasons in 1994, and I had no money, and I put together a huge capital stack. I don't know how I did it even to this day, and I want to talk about that because there's something really powerful about that experience that changed my business life even today. But I'll talk about that in a second. But I missed opportunities. I thought I started thinking like an employee. Where does my next check come from when I started my business? Who's going to pay the mortgage next month if I fail? What do I do? And I lost a lot of sleep. And for a long period of time, until I knew my business was on a really good trajectory. It was very, very difficult. And even then, when I was in business, I recognized cycles. I took advantage of those cycles. I did well in those cycles, but I didn't go all in on those cycles. I knew I should have. I felt it. I knew it in every way. In my bones, I knew it. And I couldn't commit because I was scared. And that's something that took me several cycles to, finally break that habit. It is still I give credit to entrepreneurs who do that every day. I mean, I have to make payroll for everyone. What happens if, last 3 years it's been very tough in real estate. A lot of people wouldn't have done it. And putting, payroll together and being responsible for people's lives, not just your families, but employees. And I always tell New York analysts who challenge us on some of our deals and explain this and what's your ROI or return on investment on that, and they're dialing down. And so I finally take the phone away from my analysts, talking to their analysts, and I say, "Can I ask you a question?" And they'll say, "Yes." I said, "Have you ever made a payroll?" And they go, "No." I said, "Have you ever evicted a family on the street and seen them sitting there with their possessions and not knowing where they're going to live that night?" He said, "No." I said, "When you have, let me know. You can ask all the questions you want." So it's, I took those things to heart. I was scared. And I didn't make some of the big decisions. I was really good at what I did, but I didn't do enough of it. I didn't take the risk that I should have taken to have been really successful earlier in life until 2010 and 11, when I recognized the new cycle was starting. I said, I'm not going to miss this opportunity. This is my time. And I went all in, and it paid off handsomely.
But when you think back on those missed opportunities, do you really have regret? Meaning, of course, you missed the business opportunity, and maybe you would be worth X amount more. You'd have X amount more experience. But do you really think that it would have changed your life in any meaningful way?
Yes, I think it would have in some ways. I think I would have. I think there would have been a calmness about having. It's interesting when I became very wealthy, not just having some money, but very wealthy. I was always about 3 to 5 years behind thinking what that wealth meant. So I still was living 3 to 5 years before, and how I made decisions, how I lost sleep at night, and even my wife felt it, and she didn't think we had the money to do some things, and her father said to us one night, he was, I guess, in his late 80s then. He said, well, Norman, I've been counting and you're worth at least $100 million. And I go, oh, no. My wife said, oh, Dad, stop it. You have no idea what you're talking about. I go, I think I may be, and of course I was, and more than that. But I didn't think that way. And so I didn't act that way. So I didn't sleep well enough knowing that.
Why do you think you didn't think about that?
I think it's, I think that you live a life a certain way, just like I lived as an employee on a salary for how many years? So it was 12 years. And when you went into business, I still worried and thought like I was an employee. It just takes time to change your way of thinking. At least it did for me in each cycle of my life. So probably 3 or 4 years behind where I was. We bought a house in 2017, and it's a lovely home. It's a wonderful home. We bought it for entertaining, for philanthropy, for community, and we're using it just for that, which is fantastic. And I lost sleep buying that house. I remember I lost sleep buying that house. How am I ever going to afford this house? I cried. I cried at night. When I bought it and I moved in, I just had a knee replacement. I was in agony. The house is very, very big. I couldn't walk room to room. It hurt so much. And I just remember sitting down in the library one day, right a week in, and I just cried. I was just by myself. I was in pain too, but I was crying. And I said, what the heck did I do? This house is so big. I'll never be able to afford it. It's crazy. And I actually cried. But it's never been a problem maintaining that house. But I was thinking, my other house was like 1/5 the cost. I never imagined having a house like this. So it takes a moment, some aha moment for you to look back and say, hey, I'm here now and you can do this.
When you think about everything you've done, are you proud of yourself? Do you feel proud?
I am proud. I'm proud for several reasons. The first is that I came from nothing, and all this I earned. It's not like I inherited it. My father didn't hand me a business, and there's nothing wrong with that, by the way, but I earned it. The second thing is I earned it fairly. I didn't cheat anybody. I didn't sue anybody. I didn't cheat anybody. I did it in a very ethical way. I never lost sleep about how I conducted myself in business. The third thing is that I provided a great product, and I never lost sleep. Anytime I heard a complaint or someone, we didn't do something well. I mean, you have a big operation. There's a whole chain to go down to running an apartment. Very often in old apartments, things happen, things break, and people don't respond the right way. And every time that ever happened, it really was like a knife in my chest that, just my mother would turn in my dreams. She would turn it and cause me, agita and pain because I wasn't providing a safe, clean place to live for someone, a particular person. So I was proud and how we conducted our business and the product we gave as well. So I'm very proud of those things. And then I took that as soon as I realized the wealth we had, I started giving back in a demonstrable way, in many different ways. But philanthropically, we started a foundation. I brought my family in that foundation, and we give together 7 figures a year, and particularly helping underprivileged people getting educated. Remember, we talked about how education was important, and I'm trying to emphasize that in our giving and in so many other ways. So I'm really proud of that as well.
How do you feel like money has changed your life and your happiness? Do you feel like it's changed anything?
Well, you don't feel the same pressure about money. Obviously, what happens when you become wealthy to some extent, you start socializing with other wealthy people. And the reason is, one, if you're in the industry, you're in finance, you meet finance people or brokers or other developers who are also successful. And so it's natural for that to happen. But you realize your old friends can't go on the vacations that you go on, and can't go to the restaurants that you want to go to. You still keep those relationships. You do things with them. You offer to pay, and we do a lot of that. But if we want to go out and charter a yacht, my friends can't do that. My older friends. So you develop new friends who can, right? And share those different life experiences with you. So when you do that, then you find out you're not so rich anymore because there's always someone richer than you. And we see that we built a beach house on a private island in Turks and Caicos, which is actually, it's one of my fantasies. I just can't believe it. I pinch my cheek every day that that's happened. We just built it in July. We moved in into July. And all our neighbors, there are 14 neighbors on the island, and they're all spectacular people. Oh my God, we love them. And they're all much wealthier than we're probably the poor people. We're probably in the ghetto on the island, And I told one of them once, who was telling me about, he was not bragging. He was just talking about his lifestyle. My yacht, he's got a 235-foot yacht, and he's got another racing yacht, and he's talking about his Gulfstream 550 that he flew over to the island, And I turned to him and I said, without saying his name, I said, I want you to know I have zero envy of you. And he looks at me and says, Norman, why would you be envious of me? I said, I envy the extra zero on your balance sheet. That's that it was not zero envy, but I have envy about the zero. And he says, I'm going to quote you. I love that. And it was not, but it's no one on the island tries to brag about their wealth. No one outshines everyone. People wear T-shirts and shorts, and no one tries to outdo anybody else. We all know we have money, and we all just want to have fun, and we appreciate what we have. This is what we pinch each other's cheeks all the time. But I'm the poorest person on the island. So I say that I just have enough money to buy a ticket to things like this. And so I'm pretty, it kind of humbles you. So you really learn really quickly that, you think you have money, you don't. And just appreciate what you have. Look back, not just forward. Don't be envious of others. And take what you've got, take your good fortune, and make sure as many people can share in it with you as possible.
Are you getting better at, do you feel like you're good at practicing that?
Oh, yeah, I do.
Yeah. Because I imagine that gets challenging. It makes sense, right? Because, whatever's like status level or income bracket you're in, you're just comparing yourself to the person that's either higher or lower to you. So it doesn't really matter how much you have, because the thing that's always true is the ability to compare yourself against others.
One of my nieces, very pretty young woman, and she stayed with us for a while at our house. She moved to Atlanta from another city, and she was making some career choices. I was not, I tried to advise her and guide her, and she wasn't listening to me. And I said, well, if you don't advance your career, what do you think, how are you going to handle, your life? And she said, well, I know I'm pretty, and, I'll find the guy or something. And I go, let me tell you something. You're pretty. I said, there are a lot more pretty women in the world than you. And that your beauty only lasts a few years. So good luck with that. So it's the same thing with wealth, right? It's just your asset. What is your asset, and how good is it? And I think it's the same thing about money, as I told my niece, which is, beauty is great, but there are more beautiful people than you, there are more wealthy people than me, a lot more. And stop being so proud of that, and just be a good person.
I was surprised when you said you were born in 1957, because you definitely keep very good care of your health. Has that always been a part of your life?
It comes and goes, but yes, I try really hard. It was not a conscious effort to look young or to feel young. It was stress relief originally. And then I was hit by a car running in 2005, and radically changed my life to the worse. I got a lot of injuries, found that I had cancer, which was a godsend, because if I didn't get injured, I wouldn't have found it, and I wouldn't be here today. So I was able to survive that, and so when I knew I couldn't run anymore, which was my big thing, I was angry at first, but then I had to find something else to channel that anger into. And so I started lifting weights. I started swimming, which I'd never really done before. And I walk, I do elliptical, whatever I can do that I can physically do, I do more now as I'm aging, I think of longevity, I think of quality of life, I think of stability, not falling, and all those things. But it was really uh, running was my stress relief, and then I had to find something to substitute for that, and that's what I keep doing. Whatever I can do, I do to the utmost.
Have you heard of this guy called Peter Attia?
No.
He wrote this book called Outlive, which I think you'll like.
Oh yeah.
The
I think
health
I
span
do
and
know.
lifespan
Yes.
thing. Yeah, so he talks about all the things that you know to both increase health span and lifespan, which I think. Yeah.
He had a whole chapter on tequila, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Cheers to that.
Cheers to that. So, I think I understand your leadership style. It sounds like you're a people first leader. How else would you describe your leadership style?
Yeah, I think I'd like to be a cheerleader for people. I like, look, Viv, people want to do good, except for those guys with the spreadsheets that I complained about earlier. People, anyone could work, everyone, multifamily. No one went to school and got a bachelor's degree in property management, Class B property management. Okay. I do this all the time with my employees, and we have right now, 50 apartment complexes. And I asked all the managers and all the regional managers, and I said, how many of you went to school to be a property manager? And how many of you grew up when you're 5 or 6 years old, and when you had class, and they said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And everyone said a policeman or a fireman or a doctor or a nurse. And you said, I want to be the manager of a Class B multifamily apartment complex. Did any of you do that? They go, no, nobody did that. I said, so you got to do it because, it's either by default or by passion. And so we have an obligation as a company to do two things. Is one, train you because you didn't get trained. You're not classically trained in this. So we got to train you and give you the tools and the skills that you need to be successful. But we've got to give you a raison d'etre. We've got to give you a reason to do it, to be passionate. And the reason to be passionate is to do good for our clients at the end of the day, which are our residents. I want you to go home at night. I want you to go home at night after a hard day of work. And it could be a grueling day of work. And I want you to go home to the dinner table. And when your kids or your wife or your husband ask you, what did you do today? You can say, today I did good. And that, in my view, is what a great leader has to do. Give people a path, give them the tools to succeed, and let that success be something that they're proud of. And that's what I try to do. And I do it with a passion and with a sincerity. And that's why I think right now our retention in the industry is 65%. In an industry where if it's 20%, that's a lot. And it's not because necessarily we pay the most. Everyone right now, with all the supply coming online, people just buying talent. And the fact we're able to hold on to people, they know they have a career here. They know they have support here. They know that I care about them here. And that care goes down the chain. It's not just me. I ensure everyone lives and breathes it, right down to the person who picks up the trash at the property. And they know they're doing something good. I think that means a lot. I do. And if I'm wrong and people leave, otherwise, shame on me, but I feel good about it. And I think that's what we have to do is a leader has to give someone a mission that they believe in, that they're passionate about, and do it really great because they know they're doing something good.
What's
Is
next
there a
for you?
textbook on that? Is someone, do you know someone wrote a book on that? I don't know, but that's the way I live my life, and it's not it's I think that comes from my dad.
Do you feel like that's the way you make even decisions on a day to day? Like because one of the hardest things about being in your position or for other leaders is the amount of the velocity and amount of decisions that you're making, whether it's a micro decision, whether it's a macro decision. What do you use to like make decisions more effectively? Are you doing the right thing? Is that a philosophy?
Well, I think there are decisions that we made. You know, when we sold most of our portfolio, 98 out of 100 multifamily properties, $3.4 billion real estate I sold in 2020 and 21 when everyone else is buying into that hubris and coming out of the pandemic. And as I was selling and making a lot of money or realizing the profits that were already in my balance sheet, but in cash now, I started worrying about what do I do with my employees. So I made a conscious decision to keep a lion's share of our employees because one, I felt the loyalty. I think someone's saying something to us here.
The lights.
Lights are flashing on and off. Probably the driver's is going here. Probably wants a drink. As I can see, you need one too.
Yeah. Well,
So I lost sleep about that. When I was making all this money, I lost sleep about those people. So I made a conscious decision to write the checks to keep the company going for several important reasons. One, I thought this new cycle, which is starting right now, was going to start about a year and a half ago. I can't believe it took so long for the market to start working its way through all this distress, which was patently obvious in March of 2022. So patently obvious. So I had to carry this company, and I lost a lot of sleep about it, and what would happen to these employees. And I invested a lot of money to keep the lights on here for this next cycle. Nor would I go out and buy things too expensively just to get fees to pay for it either. I wouldn't do that to my investors, who I knew would trust me if I asked them. So that was a very tough time with decision making about that. What's happened though is for the first time in my career, I built an infrastructure ahead of the next cycle. I didn't have that last cycle. We grew so fast we had to manage from behind. Now we're managing ahead. Second thing we did is we now, by third party managing, we're now doing fee business for the first time. We are seeing real problems today that didn't exist 5 years ago and finding solutions today that I'm ready to use when we start buying in this new cycle, which is about to happen. And the third thing is we get the market intelligence. Having 50 properties, we have a property in every, all over the city, all over the Southeast. We know what the rents are. We know what the occupancies are. We know what the delinquencies are. We know what concessions you're giving. We know what the problems are. We know what the demographics are in areas. So we have this market intelligence that, you can go research it, but you don't feel it. You don't live it. It's like being in Las Vegas and watching a blackjack table. And you can watch and go, oh, yeah, I would have played X. I would have doubled down. I would have done that. That's all great. When you have $2 or $10 on the table, you start making decisions a little bit differently. And you feel those decisions. You feel the tension and the stress when you make those decisions. Do I double? Do I split? Do I not? And so, being in the game makes you, much better when this new cycle starts. So those are the three things that we're able to accomplish. But that was a big decision. Lost a lot of sleep. Knew that lives would be impacted, and even though I was making a lot of money at the time. The second issue I have, which is a more constant issue, is about personnel. I love people so much that when I know someone's not right, I'm the last person to make the decision to let somebody go. That's the most harrowing decision that I've had. And I've realized almost every time when I finally made it, that it was better for them and better for us to have made it earlier, because they can go on with their lives. And it's not that they're bad people, but they're wrong for that particular job. I always ask the question, are you self-aware? Do you understand you're not good at that? Do you understand what your weaknesses are? Because if you do, I can help fix that. But if you aren't, there's nothing I can do. And so making those decisions early is what I've learned to do, but it's still really hard for me because I really worry about people.
What's next for you? What are your thoughts on retirement? Do you ever want to retire?
You sound like my wife. So I am torn between the love of what I do, the feeling that we're starting a new cycle that's incredibly exciting for me because as what I've done, and we haven't had a chance to talk about it, but I always come in early, I always leave at the right time. I've never been caught once the music stopped. I've been really good at that. So I'm really excited about that. And I love what I do, and I love the people I work with. But, I'm 67, and I am, my wife is retired, and, I want to give more philanthropically, do more of that. And I want to enjoy my life. I have grandchildren in Israel I want to visit more often. So there is a push and pull. But I have my daughter as my heir apparent here. She's been with me for 13 years. She's done every job in this company, and she is so smart. I'm so proud of her. And I want this to hand the baton to her and not just let it drop. And so I'm going to see this cycle through, at least for the next couple of years, make sure she's successful. All the young people here are successful. I mean, they are craving for leadership from me. I want to give it to them. They're excited by it, and they get me excited at the same time. And so I think I got another good 2 years in this business full time, and then maybe we'll see what happens after that.
Norm, I want to be respectful of your time. I know you're going to Israel tomorrow.
I am going tomorrow.
So I caught you right before, but I just want to say thank you.
Well, it was great chatting with you, great meeting you.
Yeah.
And just you came in with an RV from New Orleans just to see me here in time, and I appreciate that very much.
Yeah, we got
and you deserve another drink, so we're going to get you a Radco drink, and Dave's got a now.
Yeah, we'll do another drink.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, Norman.
All right, bye-bye.